Bill Gates and his investments. By following the money, one gets to know a person. If I were to accept someone's advice, for instance in the area of vaccines, I would follow that person's money to see where he comes from. Does he have my best interests at heart? What does following the money tell us about Bill Gates? He has an interest in highly suspicious companies, a tendency to be drawn towards poison, and an absolute focus on depopulation.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Let's face it, a man who openly promotes reducing the world population in order to save the planet, telling the world vaccines can help achieve this goal, then promotes the same vaccines to save lives? Really? Make up your mind, Bill. Do you want to save human lives, or do you want to destroy them? You can't have it both ways. Follow the money, and you will get to know the man behind it. We have seen GMOs, infected mosquitoes, tests on human guinea pigs in less developed countries, bioweapons, child trafficking and abuse on Epstein Island. Not a pretty picture, Bill. What else are you up to, The more we dove into the person Bill Gates, the more we were shocked and nauseated. Here are some more companies in which he heavily invested. They include many of the most criticized companies in the world for involvement in human rights abuses, labor abuses, environmental abuses, and tax avoidance. Big mining companies: Barrick Gold, BHP Billiton, Freeport McMoran, Glencore, Rio Tinto, Vedanta, and Vale, a Brazilian mining company that was voted with most contempt for the environment and human rights in the Public Eye Annual Awards. Agribusiness companies: Nestlé, Unilever, Archer Daniels Midland, Kraft, Mondelez International, chemical and pharmaceutical corporations, some of which we already mentioned: BASF, Dow Chemicals, GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis, and Pfizer. Beverage corporations: Coca-Cola, Diageo, PepsiCo, and SAB Miller. Construction companies: Caterpillar, which has long been accused of complicity in human rights abuses in the Palestinian-occupied territories. Defence contractors: BAE Systems, the UK's largest defence contractor and arms exporter. Excuse me? Arms? As in weapons? Bill? And we already briefly mentioned his oil-based fertilizers. Well, guess what? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Trust has a financial stake of $1.4 billion in fossil fuel companies such as BP and Anadarko Petroleum that was recently forced to pay a $5 billion environmental cleanup charge. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Trust has investments in 35 of the top 200 companies ranked by the carbon held in their reserves. These included coal giants Anglo-American, BHP Billiton, Glencore Xstrata, and Peabody Energy, and the oil majors Shell, ConocoPhillips, Chevron, Total, and Petrobras. What about the human carbon footprint, Bill? Which part of sustainability don't you understand? Or does it only concern others, like the people, who subsequently have to pay new taxes, more taxes, anything to squeeze the life force out of them just a little bit more, while you enjoy your jet-set lifestyle on your yacht and your private plane? You know, Bill, you can try to fool us with your posture and your terrible choice of clothes and hair, but we see straight through you. Some people may still believe that you're a kind nerd, giving money away to charity, but more and more people see through you. Once you burst that nerdy bubble of yours, all that is left is a Rockefeller descendant who plays his puppet role in the Depopulation Agenda 21 and 2030. No body language with excessive hand gestures and nerdy glasses sticks. No fake smiles can ever fool those who are awake. And the number of awake people grows by the minute. Now, in case you think you know all there is to know about Mr. Gates, he comes up with yet another marvel of a plan to spray millions of tons of dust into the stratosphere to stop global warming. I mean, seriously? Millions of tons of chalk are to be sprinkled up there to create a world-enveloping cloud that reflects sunlight away from us. A cloud to basically cause a worldwide solar eclipse for indefinite time. This insane plan is funded by Gates and pioneered by scientists at Harvard University. Even they admit, "I hope we don't need it. It's a very scary technology. It's quite terrifying. But the world with severe climate change impacts can also be very scary." My, that's one hell of a slogan. The initial test that was supposed to take place over New Mexico is currently on hold, amid fears that it could trigger a disastrous series of chain reactions, creating climate havoc in the form of serious droughts and hurricanes, and bring death to millions of people around the world. One fear is that spreading dust into the stratosphere may damage the ozone layer that protects us from hazardous ultraviolet radiation that causes cancer. Climatologists are also concerned that the circulation of ocean currents that regulate our weather may be disrupted. This could unleash a global outbreak of events that might devastate farmland, wipe out entire species, and foster disease epidemics. I don't know what's worse, climate change or this plan. Obviously, Bill Gates is more interested in his technological experiments than in the safety of people. Oh, I almost forgot. He's into depopulating the planet. Well, what a marvelous side effect then, right, Bill? There's a few more things about Mr. Charity that we think you should know. In 2000, he set up Gavi, Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, now called Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Not just that, he sponsored Gavi with no less than $4.44 billion. In addition, he pledged another $1.6 billion for 2021 to 25. Gavi has the power to decide the price for vaccines, which is always way too high according to critics, such as Doctors Without Borders. Like we heard Gates say in the previous episode, he has a 20-to-1 return on investment when it comes to vaccines. He makes astronomical profits in times of need. What a guy. On the board of Gavi are 4 permanent positions filled with representatives from the WHO, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, UNICEF, and the World Bank. In 2018, Gavi donated $388 million to the WHO. Gates owns the Vaccine Alliance just like he owns the WHO. He is everywhere. He decides what happens within Gavi and which decisions are made. When Gates wants a global lockdown, there will be a global lockdown. If he wants a digital certificate to prove immunity, there will be a digital certificate to prove immunity. Mandatory. If he wants the entire world to be vaccinated, the entire world will be vaccinated. Mandatory. He is way more powerful than our presidents. Make no mistake. Is it Gates himself who is so powerful? Simply because he's a Rockefeller descendant? Or is he just a puppet on one of Warren Buffett's strings? Who knows? And does it really matter? What matters at this stage is that this evil empire is exposed to the world. Once the people know whom they're dealing with, do you think they'll still want their precious vaccine? In April 2020, President Trump announced stopping the financing of the WHO. Instead, he gave the money to Gavi. Many people were shocked by this action. How could he sponsor Big Pharma? Trump has always been openly opposed against the pharmaceutical industry. Did he try to gain influence in Gavi to temper Gates? Time will tell. The last thing we wish to share with you, before hitting the final nail into Gates' coffin, concerns the influence of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in global agriculture. A study performed by Green, published in November 2014, shows the shocking truth about the influence of the Gates Foundation in agriculture around the world. Do you still believe Mr. Gates is doing good in Africa? Do you know how much of his millions in grants for agriculture actually go to Africa? A lousy 5%. Do you know where all the money ends up? With the CJIAR. International organizations such as the World Bank, UN agencies, etc. AGRA, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, set up by Gates himself. The African Agricultural Technology Foundation, the AATF, and hundreds of different research, development and policy organizations across the world. In Gates' world, it's all about R&D and policy. His money does not go to the African farmers, it goes to scientists, to laboratories. Gates' tools, AGRA and the AATF, make sure that the technologies that come rolling out of the labs get into the fields of the African farmers without them having a say in it. Not only that, as if it weren't bad enough, Gates' money for agriculture does not go to Africa where it's badly needed. No, Gates wouldn't be Gates if he didn't favor the rich countries. By far the main recipient country is the US, followed by the UK, Germany, and the Netherlands. So, the Gates Foundation fights hunger in the South by giving money to the North. How the hell is that going to work? AGRA. When we hear Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, we think irrigation projects, clean water, Green fields. Forget it. Agra's and Gates' promise to double productivity and incomes by 2020 for 30 million small-scale farming households, while reducing food insecurity by half in 20 countries, has failed miserably. Why? Because that was never the aim. 15 years after Gates set up Agra, together with the Rockefeller Foundation, the only one who has been reaping the benefits is Gates himself. The number of Africans suffering extreme hunger has increased by 30% to 131 million people in the 13 countries Agra focuses on. The African biodiversity has been replaced by monoculture, mostly corn, and farmers who failed to switch to corn were fined by their governments. Crop diversity has been sacrificed in the name of technological advance. As a result, farmers have become more and more dependent on help from Agra and their government to survive. Monocropping and the disappearance of nutrient crops such as agave and sweet potatoes have made the farmers most vulnerable to climate change and droughts. It has ruined their diet diversity and it has exhausted their land. Agra's money went to African governments, which in turn gave subsidies to the farmers if they did exactly what Agra and thus Bill Gates told them to do: buy high-tech seeds and chemicals sold by US corporations, in which Gates has shares. The seeds are expensive hybrid seeds that the farmers have to buy each and every year. The chemicals are fossil fuel-based petrochemical fertilizers. What happened to Gates's big mouth about sustainability and saving the planet? The fertilizers are very expensive. Most farmers don't sell enough corn to earn those expenses back. One bad harvest and they are all left with debts and despair. Monsanto and the other multinational seed companies are all there, benefiting from sales they would never have had without subsidies. Seed and fertilizer companies are the clear winners from these policies. By pushing his beloved technology down the throats of African farmers, Gates didn't exactly help them. He abused them and drove many to suicide. How hard is it to use your money to do truly good by listening to the people's needs for a change? How hard is it to treat them as intelligent and experienced fellow men instead of a bunch of retards who don't know what's good for them? How denigrating is that? Why aim for 80% of the population being vaccinated when everybody knows that diseases are spread by bad hygiene and polluted water? Why not simply provide clean water and proper hygiene? That would have been so much more effective and it wouldn't have cost so much money. Before we move on, let's redefine philanthropy once and for all, shall we? Robert Newman said it so well in an article in 2012. Philanthropy is the enemy of justice. The point is that poor people do not tend to ask for charity. They demand justice, which requires not so much money from the rich world as fundamental changes in the way the rich world operates, including ending tax havens, limiting the power of corporations, and changing neoliberal economics. Philanthropy is not pushing your agenda down other people's throats. It is not giving funds, means or material to people who didn't ask for it. It is not overruling other people's way of life simply because you believe that your way of life is superior. Philanthropy is not making investments in order to make more money for yourself. Philanthropy is the opposite of what is described in Agenda 21 and 2030. It is not helping dictators stay in command so they can continue to control and suppress their people, to wage war upon them, to have their precious minerals stolen, and to keep them hungry and terrified. Philanthropy is not stealing other people's children and selling them as sex slaves. What is philanthropy? It is helping your fellow man. It is sharing simply because you care. It is giving to the poor, but only if they ask for it, and only in a way that is truly helpful and respectful for them, not for you. Philanthropy is giving, sharing from an unconditional starting point, not because you want something in return. Philanthropy comes from the heart, not from reason nor technology. It is giving, sharing, because you truly want to make this world a better place. Bill Gates has other priorities than doing good. He has spread his tentacles of power into every corner of the world. Do you think you've seen it all? Well, let me be quiet for a while so you can fully grasp the extent to which Gates is indeed omnipresent. Do you see the whole picture yet? Bill Gates controls the air you breathe, the food you eat, the water you drink, the healthcare you get. He controls your life from the cradle to the grave. Do you wish to see the final nail in his coffin? Then let's move along to part 12.